Welcome to the Mercedes-Benz Rangers postgame show, and so it goes. And so in a season they rightly believed would end with their hands on the Stanley Cup, these Rangers instead are left empty-handed. The season is over. The Stanley Cup dream is over. They lose 2-1 in Game 6 to the Panthers in Florida. Inside our Delta MSG studios, John Giannone, Steve Valiquette, and Brian Boyle. This one will probably lead to an endless summer of questions, hand-wringing, and a whole lot of wondering about what went wrong. A lot of hard questions to answer, and I think that's the first one. Where did this thing go wrong?
Well, I think it went wrong just by not having the chemistry to understand and the conflict that the Rangers had offensively to try and get into the slot area and get into the middle of the ice and create scoring opportunities. I think they didn't know how to create offense into the slot when it was defended as strictly as it was for the Florida Panthers. And that was really there was no signs in this game where I thought they were going to break through. I told you that off camera. I just didn't. It was very difficult to be optimistic through this game because there weren't any signs. Through two periods, you saw a Wenberg chance where he poked at a puck and another one that went off the end wall behind Bobrovsky between he and his net. Those were the only two scoring chances after two periods. Panarin's goal, it was only his second shot from the slot area in the entire series. You have to go back to Game 4, first period, on a power play to where he had a shot, just like that one, but he missed high. Now, I just don't think that the team can have any sustained success if they don't know how to break through, and when they get into these tough opponents, tough matchups, to be able to really have some effectiveness.
Brian, you talk so much about how hard it is to score in the NHL. That could be in February. It's triply that in June. Was this more what the Florida Panthers do and did so well, or is there just something lacking for the Rangers?
The Florida Panthers were totally committed to boxing out, not letting anybody get inside the dots. They were committed to blocking anything if there was a breakdown. They were cohesive. They had everything. They checked every box defensively. They had everything going for them. They had the cadence of the game in their favor. They controlled the bounces, it seemed. They controlled anything that went wrong. They sniffed it out very quickly. They had support everywhere. And they had the arrogance of the D staying up in the play at their offensive blue line, at their defensive blue line. It was very difficult to get behind them. And then they created some chances off some turnovers throughout this series that gave the Rangers defense a little cause for pause. There was slight miscommunications. So much of it's confidence, so much of it's how you're playing in a five-man unit. And the Florida Panthers were playing it in the best five-man unit, I think, across any team in the playoffs, you could argue. And the Rangers gave everything they absolutely could, and they didn't by any means quit. They gave you a push at the very end that it was admirable. It really was. They were getting out of their comfort zone. They were trying to do different things. I saw everybody trying to finish checks. Vinny Trocheck might have had 10 hits tonight. Mm-hmm. You know, and you just try to get that momentum. That's what they call momentum. I like to call it the cadence of the game. You know where the puck's going to be. It's almost like they had foresight as to when, even when a bad play would happen, they had two bodies there to make a play. The Panthers did. So they were chasing it a little bit. And penetrating, getting inside, and creating havoc was really, really difficult for the Rangers to do.
Yeah, so this is the third consecutive season that a Rangers playoff year ends with an elimination game in which they're really limited on the scoreboard. We remember 2 playoffs ago, they lost in Game 6 in Tampa. They only scored 1 goal that night. Last year, they lost in Game 7 to the Devils, were shut out. They scored just 1 tonight, so that's 3 straight seasons in which the elimination game didn't feature enough offense to help Igor Shesterkin, who, to me, is literally blameless in what happened.
Well, so 3 years ago, you could say, well, one of the best goaltenders in the world in Tampa Bay was really difficult to get through. And last year, you can't say that in Akira Schmid. Like, he ended up in the AHL this year. And with Bobrovsky, you can say what you want, but I just don't feel like the Rangers have a clear picture of how to get into the slot area when it's taken away. And Bobrovsky, the shots that he received in this game, up until the very end when Panarin went out under the bar, everything was on the ice. Or it was coming from the point and it was clear through. There were no threatening opportunities in this game to ever make anybody, I think, really believe that getting a win here was going to be a real possibility, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's difficult, though. It's a double-edged sword because you want to bring pucks and bodies into the middle of the ice And, the Rangers obviously knew that that's where they had to spend more time, but if you're coming around the top of the circle with the puck and you end up turning it over there, that's less space for the Florida Panthers to have to transition. It's less energy, it's less energy wasted defending if you're the Florida Panthers.
That'd be attacking the dot, though.
I agree. And if the only thing I'd say is maybe on the entry you could carry it at least to the hash mark. There were a lot of turn-ups, and I like the creativity. The Rangers play an East-West game a lot, and when they're on their game, it looks like the Globetrotters. It wasn't working as much. If you take it a little farther down, you can open some things up, start getting the forwards that are back-checking from Florida to think a little bit. But again, you have to give the Panthers credit. That was clinical. It was a sight to see. I mean, Vladimir Tarasenko's diving all over the place trying to block wristers from the blue line, anything. They were committed to not let anything get to Bob, and when it did, he had a pretty easy time with most of it.
Yeah, let's continue the discussion about Igor Shesterkin because he really was, as advertised, the guy who down the stretch gave the Rangers the legitimate chance to win the Stanley Cup. And then when you look at what he did in the playoffs, he wins his first 7 games right out of the chute. Believe it or not, he went 3-6 the rest of the way, but he lost 6 games in this postseason, Steve. 5 of them were by 1 goal.
I thought there wasn't a lot of rush in this series. That's just the way Florida plays. On the penalty kill, that was really where he got hurt a little bit in this series compared to Bobrovsky, only gave up 1 goal. But when you look at all of the alone chances, the ones where players got in behind, you're looking at right now the Washington series, of course, where he was almost in a series where there weren't a lot of shots, so his challenge was to stay in the series. Up against Carolina, it was more about facing a lot of activity and then being able to deal with that because it was going to be stressful physically. He got through that. He was really tested in all 3 facets, physically, technically, and mentally in this series. And again, flew for me in flying colors. He couldn't have played any better. And for that matter, I thought this series could have been over a long time ago if not for Igor Shesterkin. And tonight again, he had these alone chances where he has to go east to west. He had, not as difficult of a game as the last 3, but it was certainly a game where he had to be on and give his team a chance to win, and he did that once again. And, a little bit of help here from Miller getting the hand of Tkachuk on the breakaway. There weren't as many loud chances in this game, but, that's as good as a rebound save as you'll see off to the weak side. Overall, big picture, to me, I'm sure the team will look back on this and say, bit of a wasted performance for us. That we got that good of goaltending. He was a .927 going into this game, and that didn't drop after this one. Maybe it even went up a couple of notches, but usually when you get goaltending in the .925 to .930, you should be still carrying on your chance to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, he allowed a goal with 48.5 seconds remaining in the first period, a little more than 9 minutes gone by in the third period, and that was it. Brian, is this maybe continually a sign that for as great as goaltenders are and can be in the NHL, it's becoming more and more rare that a goaltender can carry you the distance?
Well, he gave him life, and you never know. As a series progresses, you never know what happens. Different injuries happen. I think a lot of it had to do with games 3 and 4. The fact that Igor was still sharp in games 5 and 6 and played really well is a testament to him and what you've built around him. He is the foundation of your team. There's no question of it. And if he faltered a little bit in games 5 and 6, I wouldn't have blamed him either. I still think he was their most valuable player and is their most valuable player. But you look back at games 3 and 4. Everything takes a toll on you. It takes a toll on you mentally, but it actually physically takes a toll on you. And it's hard when you have to play those 2 games. They got running around a little bit defensively. It takes a lot out. It's hard to recover from there. And conversely with the Florida Panthers, they might have had a harder series prior to this, but they didn't have to defend as much throughout this series. And that gives a team legs. It gives a team energy. They're going to be honestly fresher, just physically fresher.
Yeah.
And goalies can carry you a long way, and you can find certain things along the way, but if you're constantly defending that much, it's really, really hard. And you need some game breakers. And, it was obviously Florida's a really good team. They're deep, and they bottled them up really well. The Rangers didn't get quite enough power plays. I thought that could have been a difference too. And, it did sort of fail them in the end. When they're built on that, and they had a lot of success on their power play throughout the year, and it won them a lot of games, they needed it to continue to win them a lot of games. That's like a player you take out of your lineup if it goes away like that.
Yeah.
Well, as you can tell, we're just getting started on the Mercedes-Benz Rangers postgame show, the final installment this season. Rangers' season is over. It'll now be a summer of discontent. After a 2-1 loss to the Florida Panthers in Game 6, we're going to talk about a whole lot more. Stay with us. You'll hear from the Rangers as well down in Florida.